Hi guys, I'm George Dahl and welcome back to my film journal. Today I'm not talking about a film specifically, but something that is film adjacent. Something which is at the intersection of things that I really love, which are classic movies and the experiential element of watching them. And I'll try to formulate this conversation in a way that's more constructive and has something to say overall about the culture rather than I don't like it. But what we're talking about is the aesthetic rebrand of Turner Classic Movies and their channel.
Like many in Hollywood these days, TCM is getting a facelift.
How they've revamped it. And I read an article in the New York Times where they made their justification for why they felt they needed to do this in order to bring in a younger demographic, to bring in a new generation to watch movies. For a long time, the aesthetic of TCM, they went for kind of like this beautiful retro noir vibe that I really loved. And recently, that's changed. Ever since the death of Robert Osborne and the usurpation of his role by Mankiewicz, I've noticed the precipitous decline of the aesthetic of Turner Classic Movies. And it's important to identify this, that the reason why Turner Classic Movies was so important was not just because they showed movies uncut with no commercials, and they showed really classic, highbrow, high-end fare. The most important part was that the element of curation. The element of curation was so important to Turner Classic Movies. The fact that the film would be bookended by an expert who would come out and give context to the movie to make you understand why it was important and why you were watching it, and to help you understand its place in cultural history. And wrapped up in that was the overall holistic aesthetic of the channel. Its package was very much noir tinged. And if not that, it was like this Edward Hopper aesthetic, who is one of my favorite artists. The idea that you were alone in a room, in a city, transported. You were the only person there. It was a cozy feeling. And it utilized perfectly the graphic work done by Charles S. Anderson Company, which really did a lot to harken back to the golden age of films with these beautiful icons that were substituted out constantly for the logo. Depending on the genre of the movie that you watched. There was a doctor, there was King Kong, there was a hard-edged private eye who was the primary logo. And that I just thought was so spectacular, the way on their website they would catalog the movies by genre. And every time you saw a scary monster pop up, you knew that it was horror movie time. And I thought that perhaps when I balked at this new aesthetic package they've put together, by the graphic design team of Sibling Rivalry, I was like, well, maybe I am just a curmudgeon. Maybe nobody really cares and I'm just complaining into the wind. But I watched a YouTube video, and one of the comments on the YouTube video of a compilation of all Turner Classic Movies bumpers from the previous 15 years, somebody wrote, "I wish I could live in that world." And I couldn't agree more.
Remember somewhere the sun is shining, so always look for the silver lining.
Spectacular, beautiful Edward Hopper collages, the movie projectors, the feeling that you were hanging out in those Edward Hopper spaces, those desolate spaces where people are lonely, but the paintings are not sad. They're paintings of solace. They're paintings of contemplation and of peace, where characters are always observing. They're looking out the window, or they're being introspective. That's what I really liked about it. And unfortunately now, to really seal the deal and piss me off, the tagline is, "Where then meets now." That's not what I wanted. I wanted now to meet then. I wanted to be transported somewhere else. I wanted to live in the world of those movies, and the work that Charles S. Anderson Company really helped transport you there. What I wanted when I turned on Turner Classic Movies was to go back, to be somewhere else, to get something different than what I was being sold on every other channel, to go to a world and a universe where I was in the world in which these old movies were made. That's no longer the case. Now the whole thing just looks like an iPod commercial. Bright colors, abstract designs, etc. But I think that I have a leg to stand on in that contemporary graphic design, I think for the most part, is kind of bad. I think there's a emphasis on minimalism and on abstraction that I think can be seen in those horrific, corporate blob people that you see used, like, oh, hey, look, we're all working as a team. And I see in the TCM rebrand the same sentiment of taking something old and trying to fashion it into something homogenous. And it reminds me a lot of like what Ted Turner, was doing, which is interesting. Ted Turner was the guy, to his great credit, who founded Turner Classic Movies and thought that it was important to have a channel on basic cable or, extended cable that featured these movies nonstop and with no commercials. So I'm not really sure the financials of it, but I imagine they probably ran into loss. And, for everything he's done for Turner Classic Movies, that's great, and I applaud him for it. He was also possessed of the wrong-headed notion that he needed to take it upon himself to recolor or add color to old black and white films in the late 90s. This was obviously a horrible idea, and he received a public shellacking from it, from everyone from Siskel and Ebert to Steven Spielberg, where he was framed as a sort of cultural vandal for doing this. He said, this is the way to get young people to watch classic movies, is to colorize them, because nobody wants to watch anything that's black and white. And in my opinion, I don't mean to be like a gatekeeper here, but if that's what you have to do to bring somebody in, I don't think they're going to stick around. You want the person that's drawn to it as it is. You don't want to have to dress it up and sell it as something it isn't and sort of smuggle it, under cover of darkness. What we're seeing here with Turner Classic Movies is the almost, obviously on a less egregious scale, but a similar sentiment. We need to have an aesthetic for the channel that matches this generation. So instead of visiting Robert Osborne's, beautiful, secluded, quiet New York loft, we are now on sets that look like, the corner office at Google headquarters. But what I think TCM had back in the early days when I was growing up was something special. And I don't think I'm just being a curmudgeon. I think that with this new aesthetic move, they've hollowed out the channel, they've stripped it bare, and they've made it less special. But you know what? Politics aside, cultural aesthetics aside, the thing that I really miss is just I don't have that old TCM that I can retreat to and snuggle up to and be cozy in anymore. So there's more video reviews coming. There are more long-form conversations coming. If you appreciate my sentiments here, please like and subscribe. And also check out the Film Journal podcast, which is available on all major podcast platforms, which features audio-only versions of my long-form interviews, just in case you guys don't have the YouTube Premium and can't click off the thing and listen to it on your phone. You can now listen to it via podcast, just audio only. But hey, guys, I really appreciate how much the channel is growing. I hope I'm providing content that you like, and it was good to see you again. Talk to you soon.
You're in trouble.
Oh, I am.
What kind of trouble?
I can't get Turner Classic Movies.
Well, why don't you call your local cable operator?
I have. But they still don't carry it.
Well, keep calling. It's worth the wait.
Do you have it?
Sister, I don't even have a radio.